For whatever reason, I really like statistics, and this is my Home Assistant setup. And I've got a lot of cool graphs in here, and it's really convenient, and you can see stuff. And this particular dashboard is all the different sensors that I've got checking for power, because, well, it's just interesting, but also you can estimate costs and better plan your time. Power is obviously a factor. It's going up everywhere in the world, especially here in Europe. So I have all these graphs and things, but what I recently installed is a solar power, 2 solar panels. Here in Switzerland, you don't need anything special to have them. You can just plug them directly into a wall socket, and essentially the power just gets used up during the course of the day. And here you see I've got these graphs, and this is showing the whole amount of power being used at the moment, 590 watts at this moment, doing regular stuff at this time of the evening. Here's the office power. Obviously when the computer's on, it uses a lot more. I'll zoom in there for you guys. And then you've got the solar power at the bottom, which isn't showing up because obviously it's nighttime now. But if they were, and here is how much power gets generated. If I go to the energy dashboard, you can see that today in winter we generated 0.5 kilowatt hours of solar, and we used 26. It doesn't really matter, but what something was brought to my attention by a friend of mine. He said, why don't you use one of your fancy lights? Because I use MQTT, which is kind of a brokering system which runs Home Assistant devices and other devices as well to communicate. It's like a subscription service where you subscribe to a topic, and then you can send the device can subscribe to topics, and Home Assistant can listen for topics, and then you can send information very efficiently back and forth through this broker, it's called. And I use it to control my smart lights. Maybe I will do a video. These kind of smart ring lights, they've just got Wi-Fi connected RGB LEDs, and then there's some custom code running on there, and then you can control these lights through the Home Assistant dashboard. If I go back to here, this is getting a bit of topic now, but here's all these lights, and they can then just be turned on and off as you like, and that all happens through this MQTT communication protocol. So what I thought was, or what I was told was, why don't you make a light which shows how much power you're using on kind of like a visual sense, and also and then you can also see when you're making solar, because the goal is obviously with only 2 solar panels to use up all the solar power which is being created. Otherwise you're just wasting it. I don't get paid for that because it's not a registered product, it's not a registered device, and it wouldn't make sense anyway unless you had a huge system to export power. So on the system I want to kind of show how much power I'm generating and how much power I'm using, and then have some kind of visual indication. It can be kind of an art feature as well on the wall, just another light. So I came up with a couple of designs. This is one of them. This is just 2 strips, and my idea was like having left usage and right generation as an example. So and then I can just scale how many LEDs I have with how much power I'm using. The maximum I can theoretically generate with those solar panels is 820 watts. I don't think we'll ever reach that, just generally, just because efficiency is just the peak it'll ever be. It'll probably be closer to 780, maybe 800 potentially. I'm not really sure though. I installed them in winter and have to wait till summer to get the full peak sun over them. So point being, I could scale depending on how many pixels there are, the amount of power, and then I'd cap the usage at 1000 watts and cap the solar generation also at 1000 watts. Otherwise it wouldn't make sense if I said this is like each pixel is, let's say there's 8 pixels here, if each pixel is 100 watts generation, then I can at night use 20,000 watts if the heater's going, or the water heater's going. So then only 1 pixel would ever be on, but it wouldn't be representative because that's maybe 1000 watts already, just one. So I'll just cap it, and then I will adjust my idea is to adjust the intensity of the light depending on how much it's using after it's been maxed out. So I did this one, which looks pretty okay. And then I made, but then I was thinking that's actually quite clunky to have two like that. Much more elegant just to have one long strip. So I made this one here. I have to zoom out for this because there's a lot more pixels. This has got 72 pixels just randomly because I had this lying around from a dining room light that I made. And now I'm just going to build a case for this, and then I will show you in the GUI what it looks like, and then we can have some experiments to see what it looks like when the actual generation is happening and what the lights would look like. So if I plug this in now, which I will, just to be able to see what it looks like. Now bear in mind that there's no power at the moment. There's no power being generated. So here it just lights up as the start, and now it's connected to the network, and there we go. That's the amount of power it's being used at the moment is representative. So it's using 680 watts. Beginning here, obviously no power has been generated. Let me turn off the lights briefly. Maybe now it looks a bit better. So now as I turn off the light, you see the power limit, the power amount dropped, and so did the light of the pixels, of course. And they also kind of pulse. So how this is working is every second Home Assistant just sends a new value to this light strip, this small D1 mini, and just updates it with a new value of power consumption. So if something, I will turn on the soldering iron, which uses quite a bit of power. There you go, it's 540 watts, and you see it jumps up over here as well. So it seems to work quite well. I'm pretty happy with this. I think the code still can be optimized a bit, and my idea is obviously that when you have the solar power coming on, I will turn the lights back on. One moment. So the idea is obviously that when we're using, when solar power is being generated, the red part, or in this case this yellow part, gets slowly replaced with blue going to green. So if the green is all the way up here, then this much of my total 1000 watts is covered by the solar power, and if it's more, then obviously I am covering more of the I'm actually exporting power, which is never really the goal, but it doesn't really matter because this can just act like a normal light as well. Like, let me briefly show you. If I come to the small test dashboards I've set up here, where are they? Here, there's light ones here. I think it's down here. Here it is, power indicator. So I can turn it on and off, see, and I can also long press, and I can just set it to solid, and I can just, this is how the other lights are controlled. So you can just send it colors and do whatever you like. And that's it's like a Philips Hue but DIY. So all works pretty well. But the point of this is actually that's just using, it's just gonna generate a visual indicator of how much power is being used. I also made some other modes. I don't know if you can see them that close up, but one of them is left use, right generate. That's for this one here. Left use, right generate. Yeah, don't really like that design. Bottom use, top production. That's interesting as well. So from the bottom is red, and it goes up, and from the top is the production. So it kind of pushes away the power coming from the grid. And then this one, red use, green generate. This is my favorite because it does that pulsing effect, and looks really nice when the green comes in. When it's finished, I can show you that with a simulation, or maybe tomorrow when the sun's shining, we can look at it in real time, how it actually looks. All right, we're back. Unfortunately, my other top-down camera is otherwise indisposed, but we're now at 2:30 in the day, and here you can see what I was talking about. It's completely red, And if you look at the Home Assistant dashboard, you can see what's going on at the moment. I just turned on the coffee machine. That's why it's so high. But you can see 167 watts power generation, 1000 watts consumption, sorry. And here you can see what the coffee switch is using, the office, because the computers are on, of course, and something unnamed as well. That's just the untracked stuff. There's no sensors specifically tracking that. And now you can see, so with a grid consumption of 560 and a production of 179, here's kind of what it looks like. That's green. And that's red. Let me just turn down the lights and I'll be right back. All right, so here you can see it pulsing, and that's the green and that's the red. Obviously the lights are a bit skewed. I've got a grow light in here growing some chilies, so that's why that's this different color, this pinkish. But point is, that's the idea, and the pulsing is there as well. And you can see here what's going on here. Now we've got a whole lot of stuff happening here. There's the washing machine. Tech means the router and NAS and stuff like that. The office power, that's kind of steady. There's the coffee switch in standby is 1.6 watts. Solar return is 0 watts. That's the tiny one at the bottom there. That's because we're using up all the solar, which is there. There's the coffee machine just switched on to reheat, of course. And you can see the split as to where the solar is being used. And there's the graph, which will be on the wall. All right, so here I'm printing, or cutting at least the sides of the light. I had to cut the strip diagonally because the Glowforge doesn't have such a big cutting bed. So instead of wasting a piece and cutting across the piece diagonally, I just cut a piece off with a saw, and now I'm gonna cut along it like this. So here we go. Unfortunately, I only cut the center, so it's gonna just do the outside now. I made another few updates where it has more of an animation when it drops power usage or power usage goes up. It kind of doesn't just flick into existence. It goes up and down, and kind of like a countdown or a count up, however you want to call it. We would need something to change right now for this to work. Let's see if I turn this light on here. There you go. And down. Anyway, here you see, obviously that's how much power we're generating. And then I realized that considering I have other strip lights, we have another one over here. I just added the effects to my other ones. See, green, red. And that's not all. Here we also have it. In this case, the staircase is upside down, the light strip, so red is at the bottom and green is at the top. RGB everywhere. Just one more quick update. The sun's shining like mad. So we're generating about 600 watts, 550, something like that, and using, what's that, probably 100, 200 from the grid. And the rest is all coming from the sun. So if this were completely green and there'd be no red, that means I'm using only solar power and I'm having to import none of it. But as you can see, it's still, some of it's still coming from the grid. Don't know what's running at the moment, but yeah. pretty happy with that.